Microsoft Excel is not just a spreadsheet application. It is a versatile tool that can change the way you work data. From organizing your personal finance, adding up complex numbers for business purposes, Excel has got you covered. Today, we're diving into the powerful world of Microsoft Excel, that go-to software for data management, analysis, and visualization. This video is packed with valuable insights and tips to help you unleash Excel's full potential. That said, let's get started. Introduction to Microsoft Excel. Quickly, we'll look at how to navigate the Microsoft Excel interface. When we launch Microsoft Excel, we are greeted with a dash screen that looks like this. Blank workbook and a series of templates. You could choose any of these templates or decide to search for a template just by going to the search bar there and then type a keyword, search. And under templates, you find different other templates with the keyword budget. However, for this discussion, we would be using the blank workbook. Microsoft Excel is presented in tabs, and each tab opens up a ribbon, and inside the ribbon, you have groups. Inside the workbook, you have worksheet. So this is sheet 1, and Excel is presented in rows and columns. Rows horizontally and columns vertically. We have cells. A cell is a position on the worksheet, and this position can be identified using the column and the row. So this is D4. Because that's the position where the column and the row meet. A group of cells is defined as a range. A group of cells is a range, and it is named after the first cell to the left as C4 and the last cell to the right as G9. If you haven't noticed, each cell, the name is shown here in the name box. So this is C4, and the range, the collection of cells. To save your workbook, you just need to go to File, Save As, and you give it a name. So give it a name, call it Peter's Pastries, because that's what we're working on. Peter's Pastries. Save. The next thing we'll look at is entering and formatting data. So in this sheet, Peter's Pastry, we want to enter data of our staff members. And to enter data in Excel, you just need to come to a cell, pick a cell, and you can just type staff's name is Peter. Number 2, the second staff's name is Paul. Number 3, third staff name is Mary. Number 4, fourth staff's name is Sharon. Number 5, and I can keep going down. Excel has a wonderful inbuilt function where it can identify a sequence. So it knows that I'm writing a sequence 1, 2, 3, 4 just by taking the cursor, pick the 2 of them and drag it down. It knows I'm writing a sequence. And I can fill it up with names of my staff. To go to the next line, I just need to press enter and I'm down. Enter, and I can type another name. Enter, I can type another name. Enter, I can type another name, enter. I can type another name, and I can just keep typing names until I get tired of adding names. To move forward rather than going down, I could press the tab. So to move to the next column, I just press the tab. To move back, I press Shift and Tab. Likewise, to move up, I press Shift and Enter. Takes me up. Shift and Enter. Takes me up. Shift and Tab. Takes me back. Tab takes me forward. Tab takes me forward. Shift and Tab takes me back. So I want to write the wage, the salary for each of these members of staff. So, assuming they don't all earn the same, so this is 20. Let's add up all the other names. Princeville, Joy, James. And in Excel, if you've made a mistake, for instance, I've gone to the next row, but in the name James, I've made a mistake. I can go back there. And in Excel, there's a difference between on the cell and in the cell. Right now, I am on the cell. If I try to type anything, it will erase what I had there before. However, to go in the cell, I have to double click. Now I am inside the cell, and I can make an adjustment. Yeah? Praise and love. Remember, on the cell and in the cell. To go in the cell, I have to double click. I can use my cursor keys, my arrow keys, to go to the position I want and edit that. So I've added serial numbers, I've added the name, I've added their rates, but it's easy for me to forget what I've done so far. So I can actually add a row on top here so that I can identify each column. So by coming in and right click, I can say insert. So I can label this serial number, tab, name, tab, rate, tab, number of hours worked, number of hours worked. And I could decide to put number of hours worked here, assuming they all work the same 8-hour shift. Remember, we can click and drag to repeat everything. I can also double click on this and it does the same thing. You would observe that my number of hours is looking like it's hidden somewhere, but it has stretched into column E. It hasn't. I can put my cursor in between D and E and stretch it out. So I've written the name, the rate, the number of hours, add background color, that, add, much better for a start. Now this is the rate, and rate is definitely currency. I could go to general here in the numbers group that we have up here and choose currency. Decide how many decimal places I want. If I wanted to have more decimal places, just by clicking this, I have more decimal places. If I want to have less decimal places, I think I'll leave it as just 2 decimal places, or better still, no decimal place. Makes it look tidier. Yes. And then just by clicking this button, we can decide we want to use the pounds or the euros or the dollars. You can change the currency to whichever suits you best. In adjusting the column width, you might decide I want to allow some consistency in my column width. So just by clicking on the edge here and double click on anywhere in between, immediately it adjusts itself. So it gives the exact required width. So adjusting the column width and the column height. To adjust the column width, highlight the area and you can just double click to adjust it. You can do the same thing on the rows as well. Just double click and it adjusts the columns. So if for instance you had a column that was like that, just by double clicking it adjusts everything and makes it look a lot better. Makes it look a lot better. I could decide to allow my header to come a little more and this row to come up so it's looking a little better presented. I could add one more column on one more row on top and call this histories, then in bracket time sheet. I'll go in, use my arrow keys to go to the position time sheet. But now I want this cell to run across everything, so I'll highlight all the cells and you see this button here in the align group called merge and center. Just by clicking it, I've merged, now center, and I can format this a little, increase the size just by clicking here, increase the size. I want it to turn up. I want it to have a different font. So I'll give it a different font from the others. I'll pick a font, probably this. Turns out, make it bold, and there you have it. So it's beginning to look more like the sheet we want. Now, number of hours doesn't necessarily, I don't think it needs to be that wide. I can reduce the size and make this round. Number of hours. I could just reduce the text to number of hours. Yep. Much better. Number per thousand. So there you have it. Much better. Next, we'll be looking at working with formulas and functions. We've added the names, the rates, the number of hours. Now let's see what the total will be. The total here is the rate multiplied by the number of hours. I can do that using a multiplication table that equals to 25 multiplied by 8, and that's going to tell me it's 200. But the problem with this is I have to continue to do it for all of them. So I could say equals to cell C3, which is this cell C3, multiplied by cell D3. Enter. and it knows immediately that it should be a currency because our rate is a currency. I can drag it down and it will automatically identify that it should pick the next value and come down. And this is because it's given a relative reference. So C3, if you look at it, say C4 D4, C5 D5, it keeps increasing it, taking the next row and the next row from each column and adding it up. Now, if we have a constant here and say the tax, our tax is maybe 20%, and then we'll say this is now the tax deduction. Our tax deduction now becomes 20% of this amount. So I would say equals to 20% is 20 divided by 100 as 20% of whatever this is, and that is E3. It's telling me that 20% of E3 is 4. We're looking at our tax deduction, and that's 20% of 100 multiplied by E3, which is correct. However, our tax, if we change our value of tax here to probably 18, it doesn't reflect in the answer here. So we would change that and say this is J, remember this is J2. J2 over 100 multiplied by E3. That gives us 36. And if I change the value of the tax to 20, it automatically updates. That is what we are after now. So let's change the value of the tax to 15. Let's change this to 30 automatically. And like we did in the other columns, we can just double click, but there's an error here, no value. And the reason is because when you click, you can see it's looking for J3. J3 is blank here. The next one is looking for J4, and that's because it is looking at a relative reference. So to make it an absolute reference, I'll just include a $sign. Press enter, that's 30. So now if I just drag it down, it is still taking J2 because J2 is what? An absolute reference. Double click and it's gotten the right values. And then net income. We can call it net income if we choose. Net income becomes total minus tax deduction. Total minus tax deduction. And here we can use the subtraction. We can now say equals to E3 as here, E3 minus F3, enter. So the take home will be 170. I can double click, go all the way down. So we've looked at subtraction, we've seen multiplication. In the same way we've seen division, where we try to do this value divided by 100 in division. Now we can actually also do summation. I want to see the total number of hours everyone has worked. I can just come here, say equal to sum. I and this is a function. When you try to write a function, there are different functions: the sum function, sum if, average, max, mean, and count. We're going to look at those 5 functions. Now the sum function, so we say sum of a range. Remember we said a range starts from the first one down to the last one. So we have A3 and D16. Or I could just select everything and I have a range. Press enter. It's told me that the total number of hours we work is this. I could say, how about if I check for the average income of all my staff, the average income. So this is total number of hours. Then the average income becomes equal to average of everything here. And now hit enter. It's telling me that the average income is 93.74. That's the average income. How about if let's take note of what they are. So this is the average. Then we'll say we want to look at the maximum equal to. Remember to always start with equal to open bracket. What's the maximum amount here? Enter. Then the maximum is 170. And what is the minimum amount here? The minimum received by any staff is 81.60. That's the minimum amount received by any of our staff. So we've seen how to use sum, average, max, mean. You might also want count. And there are different counts, but we'll stick to just the basic count. So let's count. I'll say count. And let me pick all this. And I say enter. So that there are 14 entries there. So that's a count function. So that's the average, max, mean, count. And this here is the sum. Yes? So that's the sum. I can make it bold. Average, max, mean, count, and also the bold. We copy from somewhere and place it somewhere else. So for instance, if I wanted to take Peter out from here, I could as well just pick him up and drag all the way out. Moved. I could hit Ctrl X, come to another cell and hit Ctrl P. Moved. I just hit Ctrl Z to take it back there. Or I could pick a cell, click on, in the clipboard, click on cut, move to another cell and come back and click on paste, and it's gone, it's moved. I could do the same with formulas, with ranges as well. So I could decide to pick everything here and cut, take it out and paste. And you can see the way it affects even the values that you have here. And that's because the value is dependent on whatever is on this range. Ctrl Z. And that's how you can copy and cut values from within the entries. So we've looked at sum, average, max, mean, count, as well as entering values into Excel and relative and absolute references. The next video, we'll look at managing worksheets and workbook. Welcome back. So as mentioned earlier, this is a worksheet. This is called sheet 1, and this is Peter's histories time sheets. Sheet 1. I can rename this sheet just by double clicking on sheet 1 here. I can call this timesheet. Yes, and I can create another sheet by clicking on this new sheet, double clicking here if I want to rename, and I'll call this staff. So that's a new sheet. I can create more sheets just by clicking on this plus sign to say new sheet. I can decide to call this a range. So I've got my staff, timesheet, different sheets, and you can see how I'm renaming them. If for instance I discover that I don't need this a range sheet, just right click and say delete. Of course, I could right click as well, say rename, copy, and then you can decide that you want to move a sheet from one worksheet to another workbook. So if we open another workbook, for instance, I will call that workbook, let's open or create a new workbook. So we have a new workbook created, and we can call this workbook, remember how to save. Remember to save this workbook, go to File, Save As, and we can give it another name, so maybe New List. That's not the most creative name, but then I have a New List and say Save. And this is now New List, and the other one is Peter's Pastries. So I could move, for instance, all the names of my staff. Remember how to copy? I'm selecting everything, your number and names, copy, right click, copy, or I could copy from here, or I could use Ctrl C. I go into the staff sheet and I could paste. To remove this worksheet called staff, the other workbook that we just created, that's Peter's Pastries, the new list that we just created. To move from here to this new list, I just need to come to staff, right click, and I'll say move or copy. If I decide to move, I'll say I want it to move to the workbook called new list. I need it to move to the end, so that's after sheet 1. And if I don't click create a copy, it will remove it from Peter's Pastry. See, it's gone. So I've moved it into the other workbook called new list. I've moved it into the other workbook called new list. Here you have it. This is new list, and that sheet has moved here. I could copy this back into the other workbook called Peter's Pastry just by saying move. And this time around, I'll say move to Peter's Pastry, move it to the end, or create a copy, and I'll say OK. I could also move to a new workbook that has not been created at all. Just say right click, move this timesheet, everything, move it to a new workbook. I see the option for new workbook, and I will say create a copy and say OK. So automatically it will create a new workbook, calling it 4. Can you see it here? Create a new workbook called book 4, and it has moved my data across. We can also link data between different worksheets. So we now have Peter's Pastries. We also have a new list. I could link information between the two of them. So for instance, I want to say that this cell should be equal to the rates. So remember, equal to, I go to the other workbook and I can take that same cell, telling me that cell is called Peter's Pastry Timesheet C3, and I can just click enter, and it has moved from this Peter's Pastries workbook to new list. I have linked the two of them. So if I make changes, so for instance, if I had the age here of each of these people, 25, 43, 21, 37, 16, 18, 27, 19, 34, 26, 28, 31, 31, and 35. I have their ages here. And one other tool in this clipboard group is this copy formatting. So just by clicking on this tab, I can copy the formatting and then paste on it. So it copies everything, the formatting, the background color, the font, all of that. Now I can link in between these two worksheets. So if I add another, for instance, another value here, say staff age. Remember, I can copy the formatting, is the staff age. Staff age is in this other sheet called new list. So how do I get it? I have to link between two workbooks. Link between two workbooks. So this is staff age. Now staff age. To get the staff age, I have to link between two workbooks. So this workbook and the other workbook called staff. Can rename this to staff age. So how do I get them now? So I'll click on staff age. Is where I want it to go. Remember to always start with equal to, and I can go straight to the other workbook. I just click and press enter. So you see it's brought the staff age. Staff age is 25. And remember that this is the absolute reference. Remember when we have the $sign, it signifies absolute reference. We don't need an absolute reference here, so I'll take out this $sign. Take out the $sign. Click enter, it's 25. And if I double click here, it pulls in all the ages. It has linked. Now, the interesting thing about this is if I change anything on this worksheet, so if I change Kunli's age to 26 and press enter, it automatically changes in the other sheet. So these two sheets are linked. Information in these two sheets are linked. So if, for instance, I wanted to add the net income, because I don't have the net income on this new list, I'm getting it from Peter's Pastry. To get the net income, I just have equal to, and I come to net income equal to, come to net income, click on that and press enter. So it has brought in the value of the net income. And just like before, if I don't want to have the absolute reference, take out those $signs, and by the time I double click, it pulls all the net income as it is in the Peter's Pastry. So we have looked at how to link between workbooks. The next thing we'll look at is sorting and filtering. Sorting and filtering. Let's tidy this up a bit. Let's take this out. Let's add a new sheet. You can move the sheet just by dragging it. I'll call this tax. And like before, we can move this. I'll just say tax is 15. Control X to cut. Take the tax code here, paste, and immediately we have that was cut. So if I delete that, we have an error here in tax deduction because it can no longer link. So I have to refer to this tax code. Click on it. So it knows that it's going to pay its tax and cell B1. Enter. It's got that value and click. So absolute value, remember absolute value, so I put a $sign. Verify that it's an absolute value. So back. So we're looking at sorting and filtering data. To sort and filter data, we have this column that we want to use to sort our data. Just click on the row. This is the row we want to use to sort our data. Click on that row and I'll go to the data tab. I can click on filter and immediately you see it's ready to begin to filter. I could say, okay, let's filter the staff age based on increase in ascending order. Staff age in ascending order. Look at that. I can be able to arrange the staff age in ascending order. Then I could names. I want to arrange all the staff in ascending order. They're in alphabetical order. You can have that way. Now the serial number tab keeps changing because it has to, because what we are doing affects the entire row. What we are doing affects the entire row. So the serial number column also changes as well. Now so we've looked at sorting data in ascending and descending order. So to convert this spreadsheet, what we've done so far, the table, let's take out the filters before we make tables. Take out the filters. Select the area you want for your table and Command T, create a table. I say OK. So automatically it creates a table. Now, your table can have different styles just by picking one from the table style group here. You can pick a different style. Pick a different style, double click. Pick a different style. You can pick a different style to use for your table. You can add rows to your table just by saying insert. You've added a new row to your table. You can add columns as well. Serial number, I think it's best where let our serial number be arranged. So you have serial number showing, and you have that. So it looks a lot better. Yeah. Video. Looks a lot better that way. You can add a row. Like I said, you can delete a row just by right clicking and just say delete. Takes out the row and the likes. Quickly, we'll look at visualizing data with chart, and we're using our table that we've created so far, Peter's pastry. And of course, because the entire purpose of data analysis is to be able to tell a story, that's why this is also quite important. I will quickly look at the relationship between the staff and the net income. Column B. On the net income, I'll just press my Control and select net income. The very next thing I want to do is I want to insert a chart. I'll probably use a histogram or a column chart here, and we can see a chart here. This chart is telling a story. It's telling us that Peter earns the highest net income, followed by Paul, or followed by Paul and Mary, and all the others just fall in line. So this is a basic chart, and I can change the type of chart just by right-clicking on the chart, and I can say change chart type. I could decide to move from column to a line chart, for instance. Pick a line chart, and it becomes a line chart. I'll go back to a column chart, and I have a column chart there. We can also format the various elements, the title, the axis, and the legends within this particular chart. You can do that. You can use the add chart elements at the top here, and I can do chart axis title horizontal as the x-axis. I can update it by double clicking and then just type these are the staff name, and the y-axis is vertical axis, and that is the net income. Is that correct? Yes. So we have that. And of course, I could also edit the title of the chart itself. I could double click, and it allows me to edit, and I'll just say staff versus net income. I have that, and this chart basically shows you the relationship between the staff and net income. I'm confident that the information here will be a very good foundation for anyone who is looking at learning to use this very powerful tool called Microsoft Excel. In subsequent videos, we'll look at VLOOKUP, we'll look at XLOOKUP, we'll look at advanced manipulations using Excel. Let me know if there's a topic you'd like us to cover. Let me know what you think about the videos in the comments. There you have it. Microsoft Excel from beginner to proficient. With that, we've come to the end of the video. Thank you for watching until the end. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.